All right, 1 o'clock on the nose. We'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
So happy Thursday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this masterclass on Family Office Technology and Cybersecurity. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Danielle Patterson, CEO of Family Office List, and it's an honor to be here with all of you. I'm especially excited to introduce you to today's distinguished speaker, Julia Valentine, CEO of Family Office Alpha. Julia is a technology expert, entrepreneur, and investor with over 20 years experience at top-tier firms such as JPMorgan, D.E. Shaw, and Mousse Partners. She has served as the COO, CTO of Public Pension Fund with 110 billion in assets under management, and is the current board member of Apple Bank, New York's largest state chartered savings bank with 17 billion in assets and 15 billion in deposits. So quite an honor to have such an expert here. Today, Julia will be sharing her insights on the critical topic of family office technology and cybersecurity. With cybersecurity being a top concern for family offices, especially given a recent report Julia will share with us in her presentation. This session is especially timely. Julia will guide us through the reasons why cybersecurity should be top of mind and how to really assess and enhance the family office's defenses. So before we get started, just a couple little housekeeping notes I see. Thank you, Artem, for dropping something in the chat. Just to confirm, it is enabled. Feel free, this is just a fun opportunity if you'd like to network. It's always fun to see who attends these. I have also enabled the Q&A. So we love to make these sessions engaging. That's why they're live. It's really about you. We can address your specific questions, concerns. So Julia's presentation today will be a shorter one. It will be about 20 minutes, action-packed insights. Feel free to drop your Q&As in that Q&A, and we'll be sure to make time for those at the end. The session will be recorded, so hopefully you can stay to the end, but if not, I'll follow up tomorrow with a recording. You're also free to share that recording with colleagues who would have enjoyed the content but weren't able to attend. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive into today's session. Julia, thank you for joining us, and it's really an honor to be able to host you today.
Danielle, it's an honor to be here. And I just want to start out by saying that this is not going to be a formal presentation because you and I are friends, and I wanted to come through. And if we can manage to talk about all of these pressing issues and at the same time have a little bit of fun and a completely informal and practical discussion, that's what I'm going for here.
It's my style. And
I know this is your style, so this is why. And of course, thank you so very much for inviting me, because it's really an honor, and you've done so much with these master classes. You're building quite a library.
Oh,
An honor to be a part of that.
Why not learn collectively, right? These are all topics, obviously, lots of people, all these attendees here today, and really need to know. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, of course. And let me share a presentation, because I figure it's not gonna, it's not gonna hurt us to at least put a couple of things on the screen, right, as we're speaking. Hopefully it's gonna help and not distract us. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
It works? Okay, great. Okay, I threw in governance just a little bit because to me, governance is what ties together cyber and tech.
Makes sense.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, because it's like, exactly. So governance is how well is your company run, no matter how small or how large it is. How well is it run, and do you have the defenses, and do you have the infrastructure to withstand whatever could happen, right? So that's why I threw that in there. And I'm going to start with cyber, and I'm going to go to tech, and then I'm going to end up with governance. So just to lay all of that out.
Yeah, it's also interconnected.
Of course. And sometimes I say, people who say that cybersecurity or think that cyber is just a technology problem, they underestimate the complexity of what cyber is or what well-designed technology is,
Mhm.
because it hits the core of your business, which is how can you protect it from grinding to a halt. It also is hugely motivational when you know that you are a part of a well-run organization. It is hugely motivating to people as well. So it's kind of funny how like it really hits on a lot of different themes, right? And
It does.
topics.
It does.
Um, and the reason that I'm starting out with cyber is because the losses on cyber have been increasing. And so I don't have the exact data for a family office,
Mhm.
but we can extrapolate, right, based on the average cost of a data breach in the United States. And it's right around $10 million. That's
Wow.
like the average cost. And of course, it covers more than having your technology down. It's also loss of productivity. It's like general panic
Yeah.
on the ship. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, I
It's
think
like,
of
oh my God.
my husband's business, they store people's data. Like if they go down, it's not an option. And
Right, exactly. And then reputational loss assessment is not even included in that, right?
yeah.
And we know that there are, based on a very good source that I know called Family Office List. There's so many, my favorite source, right? Since there's so many family offices, when we start digging into what does cyber represent, you sent me this report by JPMorgan, and I'm very grateful to you because this actually puts the metrics around it. And so when JPMorgan this year spoke with 190 single family offices in 48 geographies, they basically said that a quarter report exposure to a cybersecurity breach or fraud.
Wow.
Now, one quick note on this is severely underreported.
Hmm.
Why is it underreported? It's because of that reputational loss that we just spoke about, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So are you gonna go and when somebody asks you, is everyone gonna report it? Not at all. Um, and where we have more um, plausible data
Mhm.
is in 1 in 5 family offices not having any cybersecurity measures in place. So
Oh,
this I do believe, right?
yeah.
So it's 1 in 5. Okay, so 20% have nothing, and probably like the top family offices in terms of size will have a lot, and then everybody else is going to be somewhere in the middle, right? I mean that seems like a logical kind of um,
Assessment of cost.
distribution, right? Yeah, like this is what happens. So usually um what happens, like what is a bad cybersecurity outcome exactly? And we have 4 different metrics to keep track of that, right? So we talk about the data breach.
Mhm.
And by the way, these two, as a CTO, as COO, if you're running a family office, you have your own family office, basically there are 2 things that are really, really bad. It's when your data gets out there and when your money gets stolen.
Mhm.
Everything else, like operational disruption, probably you'll be able to deal with it somehow. Reputational damage, if you really don't talk about it too much, right?
Under the
Like
carpet? Yeah.
exactly, like those two are not really what people are gonna really worry about. But having personal data or investment portfolio out there is really not good, and obviously any financial loss
Mhm.
is really bad, right? So those are the 4 things that we worry about when we talk about cyber. And the reason that I put this slide in here is because when we build up to governance, that's exactly what governance frameworks and governance assessments
Mhm.
monitor for. But what they do is they have a holistic and comprehensive look at the entire company. So they don't care if the risk is coming from cyber, from people that you hire. It doesn't matter. Like you just want to know how big is the risk and how can you mitigate that. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? So it's like a wrapper when you're looking at it like an outside
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. Cyber's one element, but it's there can be risk in.
100%, and it's intertwined, right? And the reason that I said, let's build from cyber to technology
Hmm.
is because realistically speaking, you're not going to prevent 100% of cyber attacks or cyber incidents. No
Right.
one can. I mean, look at these companies. Look at AT&T, look at Ticketmaster, look at CrowdStrike. These are not small company that don't have the resources, right?
Right.
They have like Palo Alto there. They have big players there, right?
Right.
So they're spending the money. They're doing the assessments. They're doing penetration tests. They're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and still they get hit, right?
Yeah.
So the reason we worry about tech and the infrastructure is because if you know that at some point you could be hit, the
Right.
question is, what do you have to get back up?
Right.
If the infrastructure is really, really bad, how you gonna get back up and into your day-to-day environment operating well, and how long it's gonna take, and
Yes.
what's gonna happen while it's happening, that's really the issue. So
Yeah.
Suffolk County, you were there in May at Fordham
Yeah.
when we had a speaker who described what happened in Suffolk County. And
Yeah.
essentially what happened was Suffolk County had 4 months downtime. And during that time, none of the 911 calls went through the systems. They had people writing it down on paper, walking over to another room, trying to find someone else who can dispatch an ambulance or
And
do
that
something.
goosebumps. That is just so terrifying. In that four
Yeah,
months. Yeah.
yeah. And so literally when you're down, the infrastructure is in such a shape that it cannot get
Yeah.
back up, right? So
Right.
we had that CrowdStrike incident where planes were grounded, and there were no flights, but it took a couple of days to get back up. So that shows you more or less resilient infrastructure, right? Where airlines were able to cope with it, and within days they were
Right.
back up.
Right.
Um, but you know, this is why essentially end-to-end tech uh,
Yeah.
infrastructure, business continuity, disaster recovery, like all
Yeah.
of these things. Like, what's your plan for
Yeah.
after?
It's less about if it's going to happen, it's when.
When it's gonna
When it
happen?
happens, what do you have in place? And that's the reality of the world we're living in. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Top of
and
mind.
100%, or like something happens in the city where you're operating. Do you know who to call? Like,
Yeah.
do you have someone in the police department and FBI, et cetera, in all of these agencies, can you call somebody and ask, like, what is happening? Do I need to get out? Do I need to evacuate my office? Like, what exactly is happening? If you
Mhm.
don't have that person to call, you definitely should figure that out.
Yeah.
Like, so that's part of the whole, all of the tabletop exercises that people do, and why you have fractional experts, or at least at the very least have a couple of friends who are connected to
Yes.
that
I
kind of
think
information. Yeah,
the awareness is half the battle. I think, there's just a lack of understanding, yeah, the devastation that it can really cause. And it's, oh, it won't happen to me. But when you look at those statistics, it will. And so exactly, you need the expertise, the guidance of someone who's maybe lived through this and yeah, can help you think of those unknowns you would never think even to plan for.
exactly. Well, access to information, understanding like what's the current state, right? Like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to pivot just a little bit,
Mhm.
just to keep it interesting and keep us on our toes. I want to turn to tech for
Yeah.
just a tiny little bit. And then I'll talk about like all the steps, like if you don't have cyber to the degree that you need it, what are you going to do, right? Like what are your next couple of steps?
Awesome. So helpful.
Right. And the reason that I want to talk about technology is because here we're getting into, okay, if anything were to happen to me, I don't think we would be back up within, reasonable amount of time, whichever, however you define that, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
your family office has a couple of internal hedge funds and you have an actively traded portfolio and you need to buy and sell and you have Bloomberg terminals and all of that stuff, then you have more of an issue
Right.
to solve. If you're not in that environment and you have some breathing room, then maybe you have more time, right? But
Right.
but the question, absolutely. So the question is like, how do you build a tech infrastructure that that is resilient and that that within a reasonable amount of time you'll be able to actually rely on.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And I'm curious, again, in a case of emergency like that, do the head of family office, is this something that the whole team knows, or are you typically working with someone on the family office team that is kind of in charge of technology, or do you recommend, outsourced, CTOs? What do you think the best strategy in terms of making sure that in case of emergency, you're covered, there's a base level knowledge so that if, team is distributed in different places?
Yeah, so you have two choices, right? You have the choice of do it yourself,
Mhm.
because a lot of us worked for large organizations where they would hand you out, here's the phone number, and email and personal email of everybody on your team, or at least some of the key people that you would need to get in touch with, right? So you have that and you have it in your wallet. And then, of course, you're going to try to call them. But
Right.
in certain cases, I was in a situation where our emails were out for 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Everything was like texts and phones and you know what I mean and all that.
Yeah.
But if you can create something that you can carry with you, right,
Mhm.
from your office, you can do it yourself.
Okay.
We have virtual CISOs that can go in and map out like here are the 5 things that you should do. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And help. So if it's a very small office and you know that you're not going to hire somebody full time, you really need somebody full time, get somebody in there who can actually tell you like, do this and,
Mhm.
or hire I don't know, this team that's going to do 24/7 vulnerability scanning for you, put that into place. And
Yeah.
then it's the infrastructure that's going to run itself. And maybe, you have somebody coming in and doing assessments on it from time to time, right? Just like testing it.
Yeah, because it's not a one and done. It's a continuous, ever evolving space.
Unfortunately, technology is even if you build it and you leave it alone,
Right.
there's entropy. Like if you
Yeah.
don't touch it, if stuff starts happening, you have all of a sudden AWS did this,
Yes.
Google did that, and all of a sudden, you haven't really changed anything, but you still have to be. It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Yes. I like
To
that
you
analogy.
have to run, you have to run in really hard just to stay in place. That's
Yes. Yes. I love that. Yeah.
right. It's like that's the problem there. But yeah, you can, those are usually the two options. I mean,
Okay.
the third option is do nothing.
Right.
So that's
Right.
a good
But
option
we're
too.
learning. It's a non-negotiable. Like you can't do that if you want to have
Well,
longevity.
apparently 20% of people do, and they're totally fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so those are kind of the options that you have. And of course, unless it's a really large company and you have the budgets for all of that to bring in people full time, honestly, you don't have to. There are plenty of technologists who
Yeah.
really are looking for fractional roles, and it works really well.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, it works well. So So here we're going through this is an example of security transformation. And so on the right, I took 6 steps and kind of squished them all together into 4.
Yeah.
So whatever level of detail you want to, you want to use. On the left, it's more formal. So they're basically saying, what is your strategic framework?
Mhm.
So anytime you bring in a professional CTO or CISO, our minds are just conditioned to work in frameworks.
Yeah.
Frameworks are best practices, right? So like immediately you're like, okay, which framework am I using here? Is it NIST? Is it, so you just start kind of understanding, does the organization think in terms of frameworks or not? Because that in and of itself tells you what the maturity of the organization is. If
Okay.
nobody has ever heard of a framework, then you know.
You're like, okay, we're starting at the beginning here.
Yeah, then you're like, oh, okay. So it's a good indication that they've not even thought of it systematically.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So a framework means that you're thinking systematically. It doesn't mean that you are in a better place or a worse place, but it means that if you have risks, you have full awareness of these risks.
Okay.
That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
So at least you're ready. Like if something, God forbid, were to happen, you're like, okay, I knew that I didn't do this, this, and that. So, maybe you put a little bit more attention into how do I get back up and recover from this, or, but at least you understand kind of where you are.
Yeah. I'm
Right.
such a visual thinker. I consider it's like the roadmap, the baseline of, okay, here's where you are.
It's just like all the framework is all of your best practices collected, right?
Okay.
So a roadmap is how you get from point A, which is where you are, to point B, which is the framework.
Okay.
That's your roadmap. That's like, it's literally like, that's the road. Okay.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
you are really far away, if your current state or where you are today is really, really far from what the best practices are, your road is long and winding.
It's like,
And
I'm sorry, but
very
at least there's
boring.
a road. There is a path. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, totally. There's always a path. It's a
Yeah.
matter of like how long or how short is it, right?
Right.
And also, are you running from your current state or do you know what you're running towards?
Right.
But that's how usually, right? You start with strategic, like what is the framework that you're going to use? If you don't know, people can help you like figure that out. And then you start with, here's my current state. And what's really funny about the current state and why I always invariably do it is because it's so funny because everybody thinks that they know what's going on and that other people within the organization see it exactly the same way, which is totally not the case. I mean, it's hysterical if like doing the current assessment interviews is
Yeah.
where consultants is like a stand-up for consultants,
It's like you put on your psychologist hat and you're getting all these different stories and personalities
Oh,
and
Danielle, it's because like you talk to one person and they're like, oh, absolutely, we know everything, we do everything. And then you go and talk to somebody else and they're like, not at all.
yeah. Yeah.
Not the exact opposite. Nobody
Yeah.
knows where anything is. And it's just really funny. But the reason that we document it
Hmm.
and send it to everybody and say like, okay, sign this document is
Yeah.
because you have to make sure that people are talking about the same thing and they are on the same page.
Wow. It's like
Because
technology therapy. Like we all see eye to eye, right? We all are aware. We are
right, or at least
telling
like
the same narrative. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, same narrative. But a lot of times, even within one small company, there are 8 or 10 people, and there are completely different narratives on
Amazing.
like, yeah, seriously, it's happened.
The
Uh,
job of a technologist, it's so involved.
it is. And then future state vision or target operating model. Target
Mhm.
operating model is just a fancy name for future state vision. Target operating model is basically what do you need to be in order to operate efficiently and be well run, given your portfolio, your goals, your asset classes, what you have.
Mhm.
What I'm saying, right? So it's kind of not about technology even. It's really
Yeah.
not about tech. It's really about like, what do I need in order to operate? Do I
Mhm.
need a physical office or
Mhm.
not? You see what I'm saying? Like, do I need
Probably so highly customized, I imagine, since like
100%?
what are you
So
investing in? What are your day-to-day functions? What is the size of your team? Are you virtual? Are you, yeah.
100%. So what happens a lot of times, and why family offices are super frustrated with technology platforms, is that somebody comes in and they're a great salesperson and they sell them a platform, right?
Kind of like a one size fits all, or
Right. Or just like, oh, you don't have this, like, we can implement it for you. Great. But they never really understood what is the target operating model, like what are they required to have in order to operate efficiently. So nobody's done that thinking and analysis. And then you plop down the software and it could be, I don't know, 20% of your target operating model. And
yeah,
you're like, okay, I spent the money and like, what did I get out of that?
yeah,
Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? And nobody really wants to use it, and data goes in, it never comes out. Like all of the
Sure,
stuff.
and like, trust me, you don't want to have to know, you don't want to find out, but it's there and it's necessary because the cost of not having it is going to be far greater.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right. So once you really know what the desired future state is and what
Mhm.
you need in order to operate, that's when, like you said, build a strategic roadmap, propose new projects,
Mhm.
create the program roadmap, um, map out like here's the functionality that we're gonna need from the systems before you even do the demos, write out like here are the 40 things that I'm looking for so that when you do the demo, you can check off, out of the 40 things that I need, I had the demo, I met these people, I went to dinner with them, they're amazing people, I love them, their system can do 2 things out of 40 that I need.
Right.
Okay, maybe, you know,
And do you want to have all these, yeah, like siloed solutions or
you
yeah,
know what I'm saying, right?
yeah,
Or like, they're gonna cover 32 things out of 40 that I need. And so what is my plan for the other 8?
right,
Because then at least I know that I'm not gonna get 100%.
right.
I won't be able to get that, but at least I'm gonna get that.
And you understand where the risks if you haven't filled those 8. Yeah.
Right. Right. And you also explain it to the rest of the organization because a lot of times somebody would take the initiative, bring in the system, and then the rest of the organization just keeps poking at the 8 items or 40 that are not there. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? People also get frustrated from that. They're like, well, I took you out of spreadsheets. I didn't take you all the way to 40, but at least you were there at 32. And a lot of times it's hard to sell that.
Right. Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's just yeah. So um and then continuous improvement. It's what you said, Danielle, that's
Yeah.
like it's always
Yeah.
then something else.
Not a set it, forget it. It's a
It's
continual, as
never
the world
no,
spins on and reinvents itself, so must our systems and our levels of security and protection. Yeah.
yeah. And in a large company, what happens there is you take this, and at the point where you've done through cycles 1 through 6,
Mm-hmm.
right? You bring in somebody for a coastal governance assessment. And they're going to come up with a list of things that you haven't thought of, you haven't addressed, you haven't done, things that you cannot do the work, go through these 3 steps, do all the work, and simultaneously evaluate the quality of your own work. None of us can.
Right.
So it's really, really unpleasant. Speaking about being in tech and running tech, is when you invite a large consulting firm and you show them what you've got and
Right.
you work so hard on all of this stuff and they
Right.
write it up and there are like 58 items that are like a high risk and
I can see the really stressful. Yeah.
Oh my God. And yeah, and so a lot of people don't do these assessments because, then essentially you bring it to your colleagues, your management,
Right.
everybody else. And so you kind of like report on your own mistakes and oversight and all of that, but you will always have that, right?
Right.
It
Right.
it's unavoidable.
Right.
You're never going to be there 100% because you can go through this cycle multiple times, and then what's going to happen is the environment is going to change. Quantum computers are going to come in,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, now they can really break into any password that we set, in seconds, and so the game begins again, right?
Wow.
Now you
Yeah.
have to, yeah.
Constant evaluation, constant system of checks and balances.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is from our Ultimate Family Office Technology Provider Guide. That Family Office list was one of the sponsors on that. You're
It,
on the bottom. It's
it's
amazing.
awesome. Again, I'm a visual person, so seeing it organized the way that you've done this, and I mean, really seeing what, an opportunity in this world of technology and all the solution providers. It's obviously, a huge
Mhm.
necessity and growing. It'd be interesting to see when all these companies were started.
Oh yeah, I think it's easily, some of them easily go 30 years
Yeah.
back, 20 years back, and a lot of newcomers, a lot of really cool new technology, constant M&A, all these logos, just like
Yeah.
being all over the place and all that. And of course, this is a free guide you can do. It's like 60 pages. It's free right up on every single one of these companies. And, we'll give the links, right?
Should we send this to participants when I send the recording tomorrow?
Of course.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
just think it's so great to understand the solutions, these different companies. And in your opinion, Joy, I mean, you see them highlighted, would you say, if you were going to set a family office up for success, would they be using multiple platforms or is there even one that claims to do it all?
Well, so in the left upper corner, the end-to-end multi-asset platforms.
Hmm.
So end-to-end and multi-asset,
Hmm.
that's the promise.
Okay.
You're end-to-end. You
Right.
start with CRM, you do
Right.
portfolio management, you do risk, do accounting, you do all of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the promise. Um,
Yeah.
of course, they are more expensive because there's more functionality. Um,
Right.
I mean, there are so many pluses and minuses that we can just get into that and discuss it. So of course you can go with something like that, uh,
Right.
and then build around it, do
Right.
kind of a hybrid model where you deploy something like eFriend, which
Hmm.
I've done in the past, took eFriend, but then built reporting around it, integrated with like a better looking CRM, right? So there are lots of ways to even take that and make it more uh,
Yeah.
adapted to
Yeah.
your environment.
Yeah, and that's what I imagine. There will be offices that have maybe their solutions that they don't necessarily want to give up, and so a hybrid approach and piecing together or evaluating first, like the same way you do with the cyber risk. It's okay, well, when it comes to technology, what are you using? What do you have, and where are you lacking?
100%. And so, I mean, of course, most the family offices will Frankenstein a couple of these,
Yeah.
together, and that's
Or
you know,
build it themselves. I wonder how many of these have been created out of a
a
family
lot.
offices, right?
A
Yeah.
lot, a lot of families. I mean, we know them, right? I mean, they're just like, okay, I'm frustrated. I'm going to build my own,
Yes. Yes.
and then they build their own, and then they try to sell it. Yeah,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, no, 100%, because it's hard to find exactly that combination of the look and feel and the ease of use, right? And all of this stuff. It's not an easy task.
Right.
No doubt about it. Um, so I will now go into setting cybersecurity goals. And honestly, if you look at the current state, defining objectives, which is your future state, creating action plan or a roadmap, and then implementing and monitoring, it's all the same principle,
Yeah,
right? That we use for building technology. This is why I was like, we took a little detour. Now we're back on the path
yeah,
of cyber, but the principles are the same, right?
yeah,
You figure out your uh frameworks, what are you going to use, what standards are you going to hold yourself to, right? Where you want to end up, how to get from here to there, and then how to stay current with whatever is happening. So it's
yeah.
as simple as that. And I have very, very few slides left. So I'm just going to zoom through them,
Awesome.
as it's
And you have
enough,
plenty of
right?
questions in the queue, so don't you worry. You're not off the hook.
Right, right. So obviously there are expectations that we map out, for a cybersecurity team, what's in house, what can you outsource, and all of that. And I mean, honestly, I've seen so many different scenarios where a lot is done in house or nothing is done in house, right? There's a full spectrum of that. You just need to have a professional fractional CISO to set this up for you. So
Right.
that you can identify good teams to outsource to help you write the SLA, service level agreements and contracts with them and negotiate, do they guarantee 99% uptime, 99.9% uptime for interest? I mean, all of these things.
Right. They know what to
I,
look for, and yeah.
yeah. And then what do you do for significant risk reduction?
Hmm.
You always run through your risk assessments. There's a constant hardening of security controls, regular testing and trying to break it and, see how exactly can you break what you have, right? What are the different ways? Oh,
Hmm.
obviously you cannot do it yourself. Somebody else has to do it for you. And finally, continuous improvement. That seems to be the theme of the day.
Yes.
I put in the calculation of cybersecurity ROI. Look, some people calculate it, some people don't calculate it. There is a formula. It's the benefit against cost, and it all depends on how do you calculate the cost. Do you
Hmm.
put in just direct costs like legal fees and fines and remediation exercises? Do you put in indirect costs and evaluate them somehow? Do you put in your cost of your cyber insurance in there? It's such a subjective exercise, like it's a formula, but it really is a subjective exercise. And there's always a desire on the part of the business to define ROI. And there's always a desire on the part of technologists not to do that.
Right, right.
It's so it's interesting how,
In a poll, and yeah, you try to help them see the risk and what the cost, the repercussion of those risks, and whatever the cost it takes to protect yourself is far out, far
yeah,
outweighs those potential. But yes, that seems very hard to quantify and like a definite battle between the two sides.
100%. But what's interesting is if you decide to go and price up cybersecurity insurance,
Hmm.
they do have models where they will
Okay.
put in a bunch of stuff. They'll put in, how many devices you have. In other words, they
Okay.
will ask you a bunch of questions, and
They're
then
looking at like the
they
assets
will
under management, the size of the firm, all,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they put all of that in there. So at the very least, if you do nothing, then
Mhm.
you might as well, go and price it up and see, what do you come up as? Like, what does the market view you as a risk?
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like getting life insurance, when they take
Yes.
blood tests and all that, and they're like, the cost is going to be like, is it relatively low? Is it astronomical? Because that's also a good indication from the market. and you don't have to buy insurance at the end of the day. I'm not going to incite people to like go and get free services where
No, but it is an
decide to buy a
interesting way to
product.
think about it,
But people do that,
Yeah, yeah.
And then I wanted to mention this is one of my favorite topics, the COSO governance model. COSO is the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. It is the governance model that is widely used and adopted by financial services firms. Family offices are a part of. And if you go to the COSO website, there are so many free resources. It's
Oh, wow.
insane. It is
Yeah.
so much. And you can read up on that and you can think through, how do they think about the governance of a particular company or organization, and how can you holistically assess it.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting. There are consulting companies that would come in and do the coastal governance assessment for you. It's definitely a worthwhile topic.
Sounds like a
So
tremendous
yeah,
resource. Yeah.
it's tremendous resource, and this helps you pull together all of your control activities across cyber, across technology, internal controls in terms of your controls around moving money and anything finance department related as well. And then you look at all of that and see where there are gaps.
Okay. Wow. Very holistic picture.
So yeah, absolutely. So 2 more slides left. What are the insights? What do we see usually out there? We see that there is most certainly underestimation of complexity of what it takes to run a financial services firm, including a family office. That resource allocation is an interesting topic because it's easy to overspend on something that you might not necessarily need. In other words, when you're spending money, are you spending it on the right stuff?
Right.
How do you know if you have the right size of budget for certain things or not? Right? Like, where do you go to compare yourselves? Estimates are always lower than what you end up needing because, providers will come in and kind of lowball the estimates. A lot of times we've all seen that. And of course, regulatory compliance in certain cases, right? For RIAs, that would be regulatory compliance, not for single family offices. But at the end of the day, with tech, we try to prioritize, right? Like where should you put your attention, your budget, like all of that stuff, right? How do you prioritize what's top of mind for you? How do you measure progress? How do you actually communicate that progress to your colleagues, right, and across the organization? How do you get people to participate in all of this stuff and see that it's important? And how do you continually stay proactive? So all of these are big challenges given everything else that we have to contend with.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. One of our attendees, Maurice, great to see you on here, commented that, the consequence of a cyber attack are known to last between 1 and 3 years. So imagine the cost on clients lost due to the trust you'll have to recover. And that's, like you said, the reputation. And it's, it's deeper than just the money. It's everything. Well, this was amazing, Julia. It's really opened my eyes to what an important role, having the proper security measures in place and having the process and having experts you can rely on who think to, ask these hard questions and evaluate your current infrastructure. There are lots of questions. Some of them are in the chat. Some of them are in the Q&A. If anyone has, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to jump straight to the Q&A. So if you put one in the chat, it was hard to siphon through everything. But I'll start. So you've answered a few of them, but what would you say, just if you could give advice, what key criteria should family offices prioritize when selecting technology providers? And I feel like you've really shown us there's no one size fits all, and it takes individual assessment. But in terms of prioritizing, it feels like it could be very overwhelming.
Yes, so I think that at some point you and I should take one of my spreadsheets and
Yeah.
repurpose it and put it out there for people to be able to use. So there is a standard process in tech
Mhm.
where you would lay out from top to bottom every single thing that you need, right?
Mhm.
Like what are you looking for, you
Right.
know, in that particular arena? Because there are many different types of providers providing all sorts of things. So in that particular, case, what is it that you are looking for?
Mm.
And that's step number one. But step number two is how much importance and urgency do you give that? Because
Mhm.
some of the things could be important to one person, uh,
Right.
and that person could be a super important person. And
Yeah.
so you have to watch out for that. But there are some things that are, must-haves. And there
Mhm.
are other things that are nice to haves. And so
Mhm.
you can have a system that you develop or that could be, I don't know, red, yellow, green. It could be 1 through 5, 5 being the most important, or 1 to 10. So it gives you more gradations. So really depending on the situation, right? And then once you have that, you
Mhm.
develop that before you bring in providers, and you bring in more than one in that category. So if you're looking for CRM, you look at 3 CRMs,
Yeah.
but you
I can't be
only start
diligent.
looking at them
Yeah.
once you've developed what you really need.
So
And
you make sure
then
it checks the boxes. Yeah. Very,
exactly. So
very.
then I would have like, so I would lay them out top to bottom, right? And
Mhm.
then, I would have like CRM number one, CRM number two, CRM number three.
Mhm.
And I would literally do a heat map that says like it's green in 8 areas out of 40
Mhm.
that I need. Do you know what I mean?
I love the
So
strategic
so
approach. Yeah.
then if you are really like if you work for a very large organization, you're going to be required to score it, or even possibly, turn that into an RFP process. If you are lucky enough that you work for a family office, it's very informal. You still want to document that, because 2 years later, people are going to completely forget about why you picked this one and not that one.
Right.
And you
Right.
will that
Yes.
too,
Documentation for sure. Yes.
right?
So
It's
people
like,
aren't
and then
pointing
you're
their
like,
fingers or claiming they didn't know. Yes.
right. And like if your signature is on that contract, you know who they're gonna blame for all of that. You better document all of these things.
Right.
And we can give you we can Danielle and I will work on our next
Yeah.
book.
I
Now that
love
we're
that
done, we're
idea.
done with the provider guide. We need
Yes.
to find
Yes.
something
Yes.
else to occupy ourselves with.
Exactly. More to come.
More
Yeah.
to come. Right. And so and that's how you do that. And what you're gonna find is with every demo, you're going to be like, oh, I haven't thought of that. Wow,
Yes.
this company can
Yes.
bring this or that to the table. Let's add it, right?
Yes.
Now it
Yeah.
becomes like I have more of the must-haves and good to haves, and do you know what I mean? And all of this stuff.
Walls. Yeah.
And if especially if you have decision by committee, then you must have that, because then the conversation is going to be, is this a must or is it a nice have?
Right.
Do you
Right.
know what I mean? Because people love beautifully designed systems. Like you
Yeah.
show them something that's pretty, and they're like, I want that pretty thing. I don't want that ugly thing.
And to ease of use, or yeah, I mean, there's
Right. But on the other hand, you do want the ease of use, or maybe people, maybe your investors on the road a lot, right? And so you're trying to get them to use something that looks awesome to you because you're at your in your office at your desk all the time. And on the desktop, it looks amazing, but the
right.
mobile version is unusable. And
Right.
they're the ones who will use it 80% of the time. And when they're traveling, they really can't.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? So these are all of the interesting things,
Mm.
and you don't have to go crazy to, to develop like just one little spreadsheet with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. There's some really good questions here. I want to make sure. And if we don't get to all of them, I'll download the chat. I'll download the Q&A so Julia has them and she can follow up specifically. But the next one, I'm very interested on this as well with what could we equip our team to deal with disinformation spread by the AI tech booming? How would you manage the risks of misinformation and deal flow? That's tough.
Say it again, how would you manage the
How are you managing the risks of misinformation and deal flow, and kind of how to deal with the disinformation spread by AI tech boom?
oh my God, whoever is going to come up with a cheap answer to that is gonna we really want to invest in that because look, right now we know how to do due diligence,
Right.
right? And the only way to do due diligence is to pay for that due diligence. So there are corporate risk organizations that in certain cases, when you are doing a deal, companies do hire people who would go in and verify, who is this person, and literally speak to neighbors, teachers, friends, kindergarten friends, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there are companies like that. They are mostly there are people from three-letter agencies, who formerly, who have the skill sets to actually dig deep. There are databases that will tell you if someone is, I'm kind of purposefully, saying like it's about a person, let's say, right? So there are databases where you pay $1 per search, and they tell you if a person is on any, is like wanted by Interpol or something like that, right? So, and in certain cases, you do want to run it through and take a big screenshot of it and just like have the proof that you've actually looked, right, and verify that this person is not criminally charged. And banks spend millions of dollars on AML compliance systems, all sorts of systems where you fight AI with AI.
Wow.
Right? And at this point, if you track RegTech, as I track RegTech, I track all of these AI solutions that banks use, because and there are instances where you would do the AML compliance on, using your AI system, and you will see a human trafficking ring or something like that, because you basically have one apartment that orders like 38 lunches every day, and they map it out on the map, and there's, it's so easy to see that. So it all depends on where you're sitting, what your concrete situation is. But we're going to see a lot more of that. And with the deep fakes and everything else, it's going to be tough, right? With verifications. There are biometric solutions where, every time we've used something and we've used it successfully, and let's say, we started adding voice verification to wire fraud, right? So we always would call and do voice verification. I think that soon we're going to see everywhere, we're going to add biometrics to that. So it's going to read my face, my palm, or something in addition to my voice. And it's going to be checked for whether or not, using infrared technology, we're going to check whether or not that palm is attached to a live body.
Unbelievable. Wow. Like, this is our state of reality. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's
but it is our reality, right? Yeah. So Sumit Roy asks, I will be incorporating 10 to 15 different platforms. Which cybersecurity company would you, Julia, recommend?
It depends on for what. So there are cyber companies that have SaaS platforms. There are cyber companies that offer managed services. There are all sorts of interesting educational cybersecurity, platforms where you can sit there and compose. I did that at some point in my career where I would actually sit there and using my educational platform, compose an email that would trick my colleagues into clicking on it.
Oh my God.
Usually around Christmas time, if you say you have a delivery of Christmas gifts and whatever, and like 80% of your company is going to click on that, but you can
Oh,
train
yeah.
people, you know
Yes.
what I mean? So it all depends on what exactly your target operating model or mandate is. Happy to talk about it, but like just need more info.
Yeah, yeah, Roy, feel free to elaborate on that. And that is interesting. Someone earlier in the conversation said, it really is up to the company to provide rules and training for its employees on the risks and best practices.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
agree. It's
Yeah,
just,
no, 100%, because it's you always think that you're gonna be that person who's never gonna click on that link or whatever. And the bottom line is we all do at some
yeah,
point click on something we shouldn't be clicking on. But I notice that I always like if I see a message that looks weird, I notice that I have the habit, my eyes immediately go up to where is this sent from? Right.
right,
So if it says Microsoft, it's from Microsoft, but the email says, uh, Lighthouse,
right,
whatever, Resort
right,
1 2 3, then maybe like it's not Microsoft. So
right.
I noticed that some of this behavior is we're capable of being trained on that,
Yeah,
but it took me probably 20 years to start like, okay, let's
right.
go ahead and check where it's coming from. But the bottom line is that we're all responsible for training our employees on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
just learn over time. Soon you've seen it all, but for someone who's never seen it, yeah, it's like when in doubt, forward it. Don't click.
Don't, yeah, yeah.
This is a good one. So what is the future challenge in this industry, especially where there's a lot of unknowns, like in January 2020 or November 2024, you kind of touched on those. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to even try to anticipate the future. But if you tried to kind of anticipate some of the challenges, um, yeah, given all the unknowns, what would you think?
So there are very clear challenges around quantum computing.
Okay.
So this is really um, where, in terms of cyber, that's where people think that it's not going to take 4 to 5 years. It's going to take far less.
Mhm.
And if that happens, what exactly would that entail for all of us? So quantum is definitely huge. There are obviously concerns around AI and how much that could be misused and manipulated, not just in deep fakes, but we can see that the moment ChatGPT was rolled out, the numbers, right, in terms of all of the cybersecurity crime, they
Mhm.
probably, I mean, it was an explosion. It was like an
Wow.
exponential,
Wow.
so exactly like when ChatGPT rolled out,
Mhm.
because it turns out that if somebody is composing an email, and previously they would make a lot of grammatical errors, and we would be like, oh, this is just looks weird. Now they put it into ChatGPT and it comes out beautifully. Do you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Oh, wow.
so
Yeah.
there are all of these forces. It's almost like there's like these new forces. They're all coming in, and as usual, there are people who are going to be on the side of evil, and there are going to be people who are on the side of good,
Yeah.
and and there's going to be that tug of war, almost right between the same thing. Someone's going to use it for the betterment, and someone's going to use it to the detriment of
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how it gets regulated, how we keep, AI for good and
Yeah,
balance
yeah,
the.
yeah. But emerging tech, is biometrics, AI, quantum.
Okay, amazing. Well, I see we're at the top of the hour. Sumit did chime in, so I'll make sure to get, his more specific question to you, Julia, so you can follow up and give him that expertise for a recommendation. But I can't thank you enough. Like, I learned so much. You really have such a depth of knowledge. It's fascinating, almost really scary to think
You're
about
so
this stuff,
nice.
but we have to be educated. So thank you for helping,
Anytime.
this. It was
Anytime. It's
awesome.
my pleasure, Danielle. I love being here.
Yes, it was very fun. I will follow up tomorrow, everyone, with the recording and the beautiful technology guide, so you all have that. And I hope
Yay.
everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
being here.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everyone.